The year is 1993. Miami's skyline glows like molten gold against the Caribbean sunset, its glass towers reflecting the blood-orange sky. Cigarette boats slice through Biscayne Bay, their engines roaring like mechanical beasts. In the shadows of these gleaming monuments to excess, a different empire thrives, one built on white powder and red violence. Mac Bethezar adjusts his Ray-Ban aviators as he steps from his black Ferrari Testarossa onto the weathered dock of an abandoned warehouse in Little Haiti. The air hangs thick with salt and diesel fumes. His tailored Armani suit, midnight blue and perfectly pressed, contrasts sharply with the rust-stained concrete beneath his Italian leather shoes. At 35, Mac carries himself with the coiled tension of a panther, dangerous, calculating, always ready to strike. The warehouse looms before him, its corrugated metal walls tagged with graffiti in 3 languages. Seagulls circle overhead, their cries mixing with the distant throb of reggaeton music from passing lowriders. Mac's hand instinctively moves to the Glock 19 holstered beneath his jacket as he approaches the massive sliding door. Mac Bethezar? The voice comes from the shadows. An elderly Haitian woman emerges, her dark skin weathered like ancient leather. She wears flowing robes of deep purple and gold, dozens of silver bracelets jangling on her wrists. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts, somehow seem to see everything. Madame Zelda, Mac acknowledges with a slight nod. Behind her, 2 other women materialize from the darkness, one a young Dominican with intricate braids and gold teeth that catch the fading light, the other a pale Colombian with track marks on her arms and hollow, knowing eyes. The 3 women form a semicircle around Mac as he enters the warehouse. Inside, candles flicker on makeshift altars covered with Santeria offerings, cigars, rum bottles, photographs of the dead. The scent of frankincense mixes with something else, something chemical and sharp. "You come seeking knowledge, he-ho," Madame Zelda intones, her accent thick with Caribbean mysticism. "The spirits whisper of your future." The young Dominican steps forward, her voice melodic yet menacing. "We see you rising, Mac Bethezar. Higher than the towers of Brickell Avenue. Higher than Don Duncan himself." Mac's jaw tightens at the mention of his boss. Don Duncan Cano, the Colombian kingpin who controls the eastern seaboard's cocaine flow from his fortress-like mansion in Coral Gables. The man who treats Mac like a glorified errand boy, despite his Yale MBA and strategic brilliance. The third woman, the Colombian with hollow eyes, speaks in a whisper that cuts through the humid air. "Beware the man who comes from the north, carrying badges of silver. He will be your greatest enemy, and your path to power." "What do you mean?" Mac demands, stepping closer. The candlelight dances across his sharp features, high cheekbones inherited from his Venezuelan mother, steel gray eyes from his Irish father. Madame Zelda raises her gnarled hands, revealing palms lined with intricate scars. The DEA grows hungry, like sharks smelling blood. Agent Macduff comes with warrants and wires. But in chaos there is opportunity for those bold enough to seize it. The women begin to chant in Creole, their voices weaving together like smoke. Mac feels the hair on his neck rise as thunder rumbles overhead, though no clouds mar the evening sky. The warehouse seems to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Don Duncan's empire will crumble. The Dominican woman continues, her gold teeth glinting. But from its ashes, a new king will rise. The crown of cocaine will rest upon a worthier head. Mac's phone buzzes, a Motorola StarTAC, cutting-edge technology that marks him as a man of importance. The caller ID shows Duncan. His hands shake slightly as he answers. "Mac, mi hermano." Don Duncan's heavily accented voice crackles through the speaker. "Come to the mansion. Tonight. We have business." "I'll be there in an hour," Mac replies, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. As he hangs up, the 3 women smile in unison, their expressions both knowing and terrible. "The die is cast," Madame Zelda whispers. "What will be, will be." Mac turns and walks back into the Miami twilight, the prophecy echoing in his mind. Behind him, the warehouse falls silent, except for the gentle lapping of waves against the dock. His Ferrari roars to life, and he speeds toward his destiny, unaware that in the shadows across the street, a man in a cheap suit lowers a telephoto camera and speaks quietly into a radio. "Target is mobile. Proceeding to secondary location." Don Duncan's mansion rises from coral gables like a Spanish colonial fortress, its terracotta roof tiles gleaming under the mercury vapor security lights that illuminate every corner of the compound. Palm trees sway in the evening breeze, their fronds casting dancing shadows across the manicured lawns. Armed guards patrol the perimeter, their Uzi submachine guns casual accessories against their tropical shirts. Mac's Ferrari purrs through the wrought iron gates, past fountains where stone dolphins leap eternally toward star-filled skies. The circular driveway is crowded with luxury vehicles, a white Lamborghini Diablo, several Mercedes S-Class sedans, and a modified Hummer with bulletproof glass. This is where Miami's shadow elite gather to divide territories and count blood money. The mansion's double doors are carved mahogany, each depicting scenes of conquest Spanish conquistadors claiming new worlds. Mac straightens his tie as uniformed servants usher him into the foyer, where a crystal chandelier casts rainbow prisms across marble floors. Oil paintings of Colombian landscapes line the walls, but Mac knows they hide surveillance cameras recording every gesture, every whispered conversation. Mac, mi amigo fiel. Don Duncan emerges from his study, arms spread wide in theatrical welcome. At 62, the cartel leader still commands respect through sheer presence. His silver hair is slicked back with pomade, his mustache meticulously groomed. He wears a cream-colored guayabera over pressed linen pants, gold chains glinting at his throat. His embrace smells of Cuban cigars and expensive cologne. Don Duncan, Mac replies, accepting the traditional kiss on each cheek while calculating the distance to the Don's bodyguards. Come, we eat first, business after. Duncan leads him through corridors lined with pre-Columbian artifacts, golden masks, jade figurines, obsidian knives that once spilled Aztec blood. The dining room overlooks a courtyard where peacocks strut between reflecting pools. The mahogany table seats 20, but tonight only 6 men gather around its polished surface. Mac recognizes them all. Rodriguez from the Medellin connection, Chen who controls the port of Miami, Restrepo who runs the money laundering operations through his casino chains. And there, raising a glass of Macallan 25, is Paulo Banquo. Paulo grins as Mac takes his seat. They've been partners since their days at the University of Miami, where they studied international business by day and moved product by night. Paulo's dark hair falls in waves to his shoulders, his olive skin bearing the subtle scars of their violent profession. Unlike Mac's calculated ambition, Paulo possesses an easy charm that makes enemies drop their guard. The prodigal son returns, Paulo jokes, clapping Mac on the shoulder. I was starting to think the spirits had claimed you. Just handling some spiritual consultations, Mac replies carefully. Don Duncan raises his crystal goblet, filled with wine that costs more per bottle than most Americans earn in a month. Tonight, we celebrate new territories. The Jamaican competition has been eliminated. The men around the table smile knowingly. Mac's mind flashes to newspaper headlines from that morning. Gang violence claims 12 in Liberty City. The sanitized language of legitimate media, reporting on their handiwork. But expansion requires trust. Duncan continues, his eyes scanning each face. Tomorrow I fly to Bogota for meetings with the Council of Cartels. Mac, you will oversee operations while I'm gone. Mac's heart pounds, but his face remains impassive. This is it, the opportunity the fortune tellers foretold. Of course, Don Duncan. I'm honored by your confidence. Paulo will be your second, Duncan adds, and Mac sees his friend nod eagerly. Together you will ensure our shipments reach their destinations safely. The dinner continues with discussions of routes, bribes, and body counts. Mac nods and contributes, but his mind races with possibilities. With Duncan gone, the mansion's security would be lighter. The other lieutenants would be scattered across the territory, managing their own operations. And Elena. His wife's name surfaces in his thoughts like a prayer and a curse. Elena Bethezar waits for him at their penthouse apartment overlooking Biscayne Bay. Former Miss Columbia, Harvard Law graduate, she abandoned a promising career in international law to marry into Mac's dangerous world. Her beauty is legendary raven hair that falls like silk to her waist, eyes the color of Colombian emeralds, a figure that stops traffic on Ocean Drive. But it's her mind that truly dangerous. Elena sees patterns where others see chaos, identifies weaknesses in seemingly impregnable defenses. She's already suggested that Duncan's reign has grown stagnant. that his old-world methods can't compete with the new generation of traffickers who use technology and political connections instead of just bullets and intimidation. Mac? Duncan's voice cuts through his reverie. I asked about the Port Authority situation. Handled, Mac replies smoothly. Chen's connections there are solid. No more customs inspections on our designated containers. Duncan nods approvingly. Bueno. This is why I trust you, hermano. You think before you act. If only he knew, Mac thinks, that those thoughts increasingly turn to patricide. The evening winds down with brandy and cigars on the mansion's terrace. Miami's lights twinkle below like terrestrial stars, while real ones shine overhead in the clear Caribbean sky. Mac excuses himself as the other men settle into poker games and war stories. As he walks to his car, Mac notices increased police patrols on the distant highways, unmarked sedans with too many antennas. The fortune teller's warning echoes in his mind, the man from the north with silver badges. Agent Macduff is closing in, but perhaps that pressure can be turned to advantage. His Ferrari roars to life, carrying him toward a decision that will stain the next decade with blood. Behind him, Don Duncan stands on his balcony, wine glass in hand, unaware that his most trusted lieutenant has just chosen ambition over loyalty. The pieces are in motion. The game has begun. The Bethezar penthouse occupies the entire 40th floor of a gleaming tower in Brickell Avenue's financial district. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a panoramic view of Miami's glittering skyline, where the lights of legitimate business blend seamlessly with those of the shadow economy. Mac's key turns in the reinforced steel door, and he steps into a world of Italian marble and German engineering. Elena glides from the master bedroom, wearing a silk negligee, the color of blood. Her bare feet make no sound on the polished travertine floors as she approaches, 2 glasses of Dom Perignon already in her hands. The champagne bubbles catch the light from the city below, creating tiny explosions of gold and silver. Mi amor, she purrs. Her accent a sophisticated blend of Bogotá aristocracy and American education. You look like a man who has seen his future. Mac accepts the champagne but doesn't drink. Instead, he studies his wife's face in the ambient light. At 31, Elena possesses the kind of beauty that launches wars and topples governments. But tonight, he sees something else in her emerald eyes: hunger, ambition, a predatory intelligence that matches his own. The Bruja spoke true, he says finally. Duncan trusts me enough to leave me in charge while he travels to Colombia. Elena's lips curve into a smile that would make angels weep and demons applaud. She sets down her glass and moves to the panoramic windows, her silhouette outlined against the Miami night. Below them, police helicopters circle like mechanical vultures, their searchlights probing the darkness. How long will the old fool be gone, she asks, not turning from the window. 3 days. Maybe 4 if the council meetings run long. Mac joins her, placing his hands on her shoulders. Her skin is warm silk beneath his fingers. Elena, what we discussed before, it was just talk, wasn't it? Fantasy born of frustration. She turns in his arms, and he sees something fierce burning in her eyes. Was it? Look around you, Mac. This penthouse, these clothes, this life, it's all borrowed. We live at Duncan's pleasure, spend his money, breathe by his grace. Is that what you want? To be a well-dressed servant? Forever? And if we move against him? If we're caught? Elena laughs, a sound like silver bells in a hurricane. Caught by whom? The police who take our money? The judges we own? The politicians whose campaigns we fund? She moves to the wall safe hidden behind a Botero painting, her fingers dancing across the digital keypad. Inside, stacks of $100 bills sit next to Colombian passports bearing false names. Besides, she continues, pulling out a manila folder thick with documents, I've been busy while you played soldier boy. Duncan's empire has weak points, pressure points, that the right touch could exploit. The folder contains surveillance photographs, financial records, DEA organizational charts. Mac recognizes Agent Macduff's face in several photos, a pale, intense man in his 40s with prematurely gray hair and the hollow-eyed look of someone who's seen too much violence. Macduff's been building a case for 2 years. Elena explains, spreading the documents across their glass dining table. But he needs someone on the inside. Someone close to Duncan. Someone like me. Mac finishes. The implication hangs in the air like smoke from expensive cigars. Or like Duncan himself, if he were to be compromised. If evidence of his operations were to surface after his unfortunate demise. Elena's finger traces Macduff's photograph. Imagine the promotion opportunities for the agent who brings down the entire cartel. Mac stares at the evidence his wife has compiled. Bank records showing Duncan's legitimate businesses, restaurants, construction companies, shipping firms. All of them profitable, all of them clean on the surface. But Elena has uncovered the hidden connections, the shadow transactions that link every dollar to cocaine. You want to frame Duncan posthumously, he realizes. Make him the scapegoat for the entire operation. And you, mi amor, become the grieving lieutenant who helps the authorities understand the full scope of his crimes. The reformed criminal who chooses justice over loyalty. Elena moves behind him, her hands massaging his shoulders. Think of the respect, the fear, the power. Thunder rumbles overhead, and the first drops of rain spatter against the windows. Miami's weather can change in moments, calm seas becoming tempests without warning. Mac watches the lightning illuminate the city below, its brief flashes revealing truths hidden in darkness. The fortune teller said I would rise higher than Duncan himself, he murmurs. Brujas tell people what they want to hear. I'm telling you what you need to know. Elena's voice is silk wrapped around steel. Duncan flies to Bogota tomorrow evening. His bodyguards will be reduced. He trusts his Colombian allies. Paulo will be with us, ensuring the other lieutenants stay in line. Paulo. Mac considers his oldest friend, remembering their college days when they sold dime bags to fraternity boys and dreamed of empire. He's loyal to Duncan. Paulo is loyal to success. Show him that success lies with you, and his loyalty will follow. Elena retrieves a small vial from the safe, colorless liquid that could be water or something far more lethal. This comes from our friends in the Russian mob, tasteless, odorless, completely undetectable in post-mortem analysis. Heart failure, the doctors will say. The stress of his dangerous profession. Mac takes the vial, holding it up to the light. Such a small thing to contain such enormous consequences. Outside, the storm intensifies, rain lashing the windows like tears of the damned. When Duncan returns from Colombia, Elena continues, you'll meet him at the airport. A celebration dinner for successful negotiations. Just the inner circle, you, Paulo, Rodriguez, maybe Chen, intimate, familial, the way Duncan likes it. And afterward? Elena's smile could freeze blood in tropical heat. Afterward, you become Don Mac Bethezar. The king is dead, long live the king. Mac closes his fist around the vial, feeling its deadly potential. In 3 days, he could be the most powerful man in the southeastern cocaine trade. In 3 days, he could own cities, buy senators, command armies of the willing and unwilling alike. Or in 3 days, he could be dead himself, another casualty of Miami's endless drug war. The die is cast, he whispers, echoing Madame Zelda's words. Elena kisses him then, her lips tasting of champagne and ambition. Outside, Miami burns with neon and desire, a city built on dreams and sustained by nightmares. In 40 floors below, real people live real lives, unaware that their fate is being decided by 2 people drunk on power and possibility. The storm rages against the windows as if trying to warn them, but Mac and Elena hear only the thunder of their own hearts beating in perfect, deadly synchronization. Act I closes with the couple embracing against the backdrop of a city in storm, while far below, unmarked police cars maintain their silent vigil. And in Colombia, Don Duncan Cano prepares for what will be his final journey home. 3 days pass like centuries. Mac moves through his routine with mechanical precision, collecting tribute from street dealers, overseeing shipment arrivals at the port of Miami, maintaining the facade of loyal lieutenant while revolution burns in his veins. The vial of Russian poison sits in his jacket pocket like a lead weight, its presence a constant reminder of the line he's about to cross. Miami International Airport thrums with activity as Avianca Flight 052 from Bogota taxis toward the private terminal reserved for VIP passengers. Mac stands beside his black Lincoln Town car, watching armed customs officials wave the aircraft through without inspection. Money talks in every language, and Duncan's money speaks fluent bureaucrat. Elena waits in their penthouse, preparing the celebration dinner that will become a funeral feast. She's dismissed their usual staff, claiming the need for privacy during sensitive business discussions. The Russian poison now rests in a crystal decanter filled with Duncan's favorite aguardiente, the Colombian firewater that reminds him of his mountain homeland. The aircraft door opens, and Duncan emerges like a conquering emperor. His cream-colored suit is immaculate despite the long flight, his silver hair gleaming in the Florida sunshine. Behind him, his bodyguards scan the tarmac with professional paranoia, two Colombian veterans whose scars tell stories of cartel wars and DEA raids. Mac, mi hermano. Duncan's embrace carries the scent of Cuban cigars and Andean air. The meetings went perfectly. The council has approved our expansion into Atlanta and Charlotte. We are kings of the southeastern coast. Excellent news, Duncan. Mac's voice remains steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Elena has prepared a celebration dinner. Just the inner circle as you prefer. Duncan's eyes crinkle with genuine affection. That woman of yours, she understands tradition. Not like these American wives who forget their place. He climbs into the Lincoln's leather interior, gesturing for his bodyguards to follow in a separate vehicle. Tell me, how were things while I was gone? As they drive through Miami's concrete canyons, Mac reports on the week's activities. A rival gang's attempt to move product through their territory had been violently discouraged. 3 corrupt cops had been added to the payroll. A federal judge's gambling debts had been quietly paid, ensuring favorable rulings for the foreseeable future. You handle these matters like a true jefe, Duncan observes, watching the city blur past tinted windows. Sometimes I think you learn too much in that business school of yours. All those theories about efficiency and optimization, they make you cold, calculating. Whatever serves the organization best, Mac replies, his fingers unconsciously touching the vial's outline. The Bethezar penthouse gleams like a jewel in the late afternoon sun. Elena greets them wearing a stunning black dress that hugs her curves like liquid shadow. Her emerald earrings catch the light as she kisses Duncan's cheeks, the perfect picture of respectful affection. Duncan, welcome home. How were the mountains? Beautiful as always, Nina, but not as beautiful as Miami's daughters. Duncan's gallantry belongs to another era, when machismo was armor and courtesy was currency. Paulo arrives fashionably late, his Porsche 911 growling into the building's underground garage. He bounds from the elevator like a man without a care, designer jeans and silk shirt proclaiming his success to any observer. His embrace with Mac carries genuine warmth. They are brothers in everything but blood. The conquering hero returns, Paulo announces, pouring himself 3 fingers of bourbon. I hope Colombia treated you well, Duncan. The early evening unfolds with deceptive normalcy. They discuss business over hors d'oeuvres prepared by Elena's own hands. Colombian arepas stuffed with cheese. Fresh ceviche that tastes of ocean and lime. Plantains fried to golden perfection. Duncan regales them with stories from Bogotá, tales of cartel politics and mountain warfare that seem almost mythological. As darkness settles over Miami, the penthouse's ambient lighting creates intimate shadows. The city spreads below them like a circuit board, each light representing lives unaware of the drama unfolding above their heads. Police helicopters continue their nocturnal patrol, but tonight they seem more like mechanical vultures circling a predetermined feast. Elena excuses herself to prepare the main course, her movements graceful as a dancer's as she glides toward the kitchen. Mac watches his wife's reflection in the panoramic windows, noting how her silhouette seems to shimmer between saint and succubus depending on the angle of observation. She is magnificent. You're Elena, Duncan comments, swirling aguardiente in his crystal glass. You are fortunate, Mac. A woman like that could make empires rise or fall. She is inspiring. Mac agrees, the understatement nearly choking him. Paulo raises his bourbon in a mock toast. To women who understand power. Duncan laughs and lifts his own glass. To power that understands women. They drink, and Mac watches the clear liquid disappear down Duncan's throat like liquid destiny. The poison is tasteless, Elena assured him, undetectable until it stops the heart with the efficiency of a professional assassin. The council was impressed with our operations. Duncan continues, setting down his empty glass. They want to expand our territory northward, into the Carolinas and Virginia. More work, but more profit. How much more? Paulo asks, always quick to calculate personal advantage. Potentially triple our current volume, but it will require new partnerships, new routes, new methods of persuasion. Duncan's smile carries the promise of violence. Mac, I want you to oversee the expansion. You have the education and the instincts for this kind of growth. Mac's heart pounds as he recognizes irony's bitter taste. Duncan offers him expanded power with one breath, while Mac's poison works through his bloodstream with the next. I'm honored by your trust, Don Duncan. Trust must be earned, then maintained. Duncan reaches for the aguardiente again, pouring another generous measure. In Colombia, I learned that the council faces new challenges. The Americans are creating a special task force, Operation Green Ice, they call it. Money laundering, specifically. Elena returns from the kitchen carrying a silver platter laden with ropa vieja, the shredded beef dish that Duncan favors above all others. Her smile radiates domestic perfection, but Mac sees the predatory gleam in her emerald eyes. Gentlemen, dinner is served. They move to the dining table as thunder rumbles overhead. Miami's summer storms arrive with little warning, transforming clear skies into tempests within minutes. Lightning illuminates the penthouse in stark, dramatic flashes while rain begins its assault on the panoramic windows. Duncan takes another sip of aguardiente, then sets the glass down with trembling fingers. His face, normally composed and authoritative, suddenly appears flushed and uncertain. I feel strange, he murmurs, one hand moving to his chest. Perhaps the altitude change. Elena moves behind his chair, ostensibly to serve more beef. Her hands rest on Duncan's shoulders as if offering comfort. But Mac sees her fingers probe for his pulse point with medical precision. Don Duncan, are you all right? Mac asks, his voice perfectly calibrated between concern and confusion. The most powerful man in Miami's underworld looks up with eyes that have already begun to cloud. His mouth opens as if to speak, but only a soft gasp emerges. Then Don Duncan Cano, king of cocaine, slumps forward onto Elena's fine china, his empire suddenly, irrevocably without a ruler. Silence descends upon the penthouse like a shroud, broken only by the storm's fury against the windows and the soft tick of an antique Colombian clock. Don Duncan Cano lies motionless across Elena's dining table, his silver hair scattered across the fine china like metallic confetti. The most feared man in Miami's underworld has been reduced to stillness by invisible chemistry and ruthless ambition. Paulo drops his bourbon glass, the crystal shattering against travertine floors in a percussion of finality. Dios mío, Duncan! He lunges forward, checking for a pulse with fingers that shake like autumn leaves. Mac, call 911. Call the paramedics. No. Elena's voice cuts through Paulo's panic with surgical precision. She stands behind Duncan's chair, her black dress making her appear like a beautiful angel of death. Look at him, Paulo. Really look. Mac forces himself to approach his mentor's body, though every instinct screams retreat. Duncan's face has relaxed into an expression of peaceful surprise, as if death had introduced itself politely before claiming its due. His eyes stare at nothing, pupils already beginning to dilate in the penthouse's ambient lighting. Heart attack, Mac says, his voice surprisingly steady. The stress, the travel, the altitude changes in Colombia. It was bound to happen eventually. Paulo stares at them both, his naturally olive complexion now pale as morning fog. We need to call someone. The police, the medical examiner. Somebody. You can't just... He gestures helplessly at Duncan's corpse. Elena moves with fluid grace to the bar, pouring herself a glass of wine as if death were merely another dinner guest requiring accommodation. Actually, we can. Duncan's bodyguards are waiting in the garage. They'll assume he's conducting private business. His legitimate contacts won't expect communication until tomorrow morning. What are you suggesting? Paulo demands, though his tone suggests he already knows and fears the answer. Mac sits across from Duncan's body, studying the man who had been father, mentor, and obstacle rolled into one imposing figure. I'm suggesting that Don Duncan Cano died peacefully in his sleep at his Coral Gables mansion, sometime during the early morning hours. Natural causes. The stress of running a complex import business. You're both insane. Paulo backs toward the elevator, his survival instincts finally overriding loyalty and friendship. This is murder. You poisoned him, didn't you? That's why Elena dismissed the staff. Why you insisted on privacy? Elena's laugh sounds like silver wind chimes in a hurricane. Murder, Paulo? Look around you. Do you see violence? Do you see struggle? Duncan lived dangerously and died naturally. These things happen in our profession. Our profession doesn't include assassinating our own jefe. Paulo's voice rises, but he doesn't reach for the elevator call button. Some part of him recognizes that crossing that threshold means choosing sides in a war that's already begun. Mac stands slowly, his hands visible and empty, but his presence suddenly commanding in ways it never was while Duncan lived. The storm outside provides dramatic punctuation as lightning illuminates the penthouse in stark black and white. Paulo, you're my oldest friend, my brother in everything but blood. But Duncan is dead, and his organization needs leadership. The Colombians expect shipments. The street dealers need product. The police and judges require their payments. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the cocaine trade. So you're just going to step into his shoes? Declare yourself the new Don? Paulo's voice carries equal measures of horror and fascination. I'm going to prevent chaos. Mac's voice grows stronger, more authoritative. Rodriguez controls the Medellin connection, but he's never trusted me. Chen owns the port, but he's loyal to profit, not people. Restrepo has the money laundering networks, but he's always been Duncan's creature. Without strong leadership, they'll fracture into competing factions within a week. Elena sets down her wine and approaches Paulo with predatory grace. And Agent Macduff is building his case. We know this from our sources in the DEA. When he strikes, he'll want to decapitate the entire organization at once. But if the organization has already transformed, if new leadership has eliminated the old corruption, you want to use Macduff's investigation to consolidate power, Paulo realizes. Eliminate the competition by feeding them to the feds. I want to survive, Mac replies simply. And I want you to survive with me. But that requires trust, Paulo. Complete trust. The three of them stand in the penthouse's soft lighting, while Miami glitters below and thunder echoes overhead. Duncan's body serves as a silent reminder of mortality's democracy. King and peasant both answer death's final summons. Paulo moves to the panoramic windows, staring out at the city that has become their battlefield. Police helicopters continue their patrols, their searchlights probing shadows that hide countless crimes. Far below, legitimate citizens sleep peacefully, unaware that a changing of the guard has just occurred in their shadow economy. The bodyguards will ask questions when Duncan doesn't emerge, Paulo says finally. Duncan had too much to drink. Elena responds smoothly. He's sleeping off the celebration. You and Mac left around midnight. I'll ensure he's found dead in his own bed tomorrow morning, apparently having died in his sleep. And how exactly do you plan to accomplish that miracle of logistics? Elena's smile could make devils weep with envy. Duncan's mansion has service tunnels for the staff. I know them well from previous visits. Getting him there will be simple. Making it appear natural will be artistry. Mac watches his wife explain murder with the casual precision of a business presentation. Elena graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law, but her true education came from growing up in Medellin during the height of the Cartel Wars. She understands violence the way others understand poetry. What about the succession? Paulo asks. The other lieutenants won't simply accept Mac's authority. There will be challenges, maybe open warfare. Then we'll meet those challenges, Mac replies. Duncan's dead, Paulo. That fact can't be changed. But how his death is perceived, how his legacy is managed, how his empire transitions, those things are still within our control. Paulo turns from the window, and Mac sees the moment decision crystallizes in his friend's dark eyes. What do you need me to do? Why? Elena claps her hands together like a pleased child. Practical, Paulo. Always the survivor. I need you to be my segundo, Mac says. My right hand. Help me maintain order among the lieutenants until we can establish new protocols. Some of them will test my authority, Rodriguez especially. But with you beside me, they'll think twice about open rebellion. And in return, you become part of the new order instead of a casualty of the old one. Mac extends his hand, offering alliance or damnation depending on perspective. Partners. As we always were. Paulo stares at the outstretched hand for what feels like eternity. Outside, The storm reaches its crescendo, rain lashing the windows with biblical fury. Then he reaches out and grasps Mac's fingers in a grip that seals both their fates. Partners, he agrees. But Mac, this changes everything. There's no going back. There never was, Elena murmurs, already moving toward Duncan's body with the efficiency of an undertaker. Now help me get him to the service elevator. We have a kingdom to inherit. As they lift Duncan's surprisingly heavy corpse, Mac feels the weight of more than flesh and bone. He carries the burden of betrayal, the gravity of ambition realized, the terrible responsibility of power seized rather than earned. But beneath it all, he feels something else: freedom from subservience, liberation from another man's vision, the intoxicating possibility of absolute authority. The storm rages against Miami as three conspirators work to rewrite history in their own favor, unaware that in killing a king, they have awakened forces that will ultimately consume them all. Dawn breaks over Miami, like a blood-soaked promise, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson that seem prophetic in their violence. The storm has passed, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming under the early morning sun. But in the shadows of Coral Gables, darkness lingers in the form of carefully orchestrated deception. Mac stands in Duncan's master bedroom, watching Elena arrange the corpse with the meticulous attention of a museum curator. She has changed into funeral black, a conservative dress that transforms her from temptress to grieving family friend. Duncan lies peacefully in his king-sized bed, surrounded by the artifacts of his empire. Pre-Columbian gold, religious icons, photographs of himself, with presidents and cardinals who sold their souls for cocaine money. Perfect, Elena murmurs, adjusting Duncan's hands to fold naturally across his chest. A man at peace with his legacy. The service tunnels beneath the mansion had made their midnight transportation surprisingly simple. Elena's knowledge of the estate's hidden passages spoke to preparations Mac hadn't fully appreciated. His wife thinks in contingencies, plans for scenarios that haven't yet materialized but inevitably will. Mac's Motorola StarTAC buzzes Rodriguez calling from the Medellin connection. Not yet, Mac tells Elena. We need to establish the timeline first. At 7:47 a.m., Maria Santos, Duncan's longtime housekeeper, discovers her employer's body during her routine morning check. Her screams echo through the mansion's corridors, bringing guards running with weapons drawn. The woman who has cleaned up after cartel business for 15 years knows death when she sees it. But this death appears natural, peaceful, inevitable. By 8:15 a.m., paramedics arrive at the mansion, their ambulance lights flashing uselessly for a man beyond medical intervention. The Coral Gables police follow protocol, treating the scene as potential crime until evidence suggests otherwise. But Duncan's personal physician, Dr. Hernandez, a man whose silence has been purchased with Swiss bank accounts, pronounced death by natural causes after a perfunctory examination. Massive coronary event, Dr. Hernandez tells the assembled guards and household staff. The stress of his business activities, combined with his age and lifestyle. Frankly, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. Mac receives the call at 8:43 a.m., while sitting in his Lincoln outside a Starbucks in downtown Miami. He affects shocked disbelief, demanding to know details, insisting on rushing to the mansion immediately. Paulo, playing his role perfectly, meets him there with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. I can't believe he's gone. Paulo whispers as they embrace in Duncan's foyer, surrounded by genuine mourners and calculated observers. Just last night he was talking about expansion, about the future. The future continues, Mac replies, his voice heavy with manufactured grief and genuine resolve. Duncan would want that. Rodriguez arrives within the hour, his swarthy face creased with suspicion and calculation. The Medellin connection has always been ambitious, viewing Mac as an obstacle to his own advancement. Who found him? Rodriguez demands in heavily accented English. Maria, his housekeeper, Mac replies. She's worked here for 15 years, completely trustworthy. And where were you, Mac Bethezar, when our Jefe died alone? Elena steps forward before Mac can respond, her presence commanding attention through sheer force of personality. He was with me, at our home. We hosted dinner for Don Duncan last evening. Paulo was there as well. Duncan left around midnight, saying he was tired from his travels. Rodriguez's dark eyes move between the three conspirators, searching for cracks in their facade. Very convenient, The three closest to Duncan, all with perfect alibis. Careful, Rodriguez. Paulo's voice carries warning despite his grief-stricken appearance. Grief makes us say things we might regret. The mansion fills with cartel members, legitimate businessmen, politicians, and clergy, the complex ecosystem that sustained Duncan's empire. Mayor Suarez arrives with appropriate condolences, followed by Judge Martinez, whose gambling debts ensure his continued cooperation. Even Cardinal Vasquez makes an appearance, offering prayers for a man whose donations built half the churches in Miami-Dade County. By noon, the immediate crisis has passed. Duncan's death appears natural to official observers, while his organization begins the delicate process of succession. Mac positions himself as the natural interim leader, the trusted lieutenant who can maintain stability during transition. But Rodriguez isn't the only one harboring suspicions. Chen, the Port Authority controller, pulls Mac aside during the gathering. Duncan's heart was strong like bull. The Chinese-American smuggler observes in his broken English. I see him lift cargo containers with bare hands. No weak heart there. Hearts are mysterious things, Mac replies diplomatically. Stress kills more men in our business than bullets. Maybe so. But bullets more honest than stress. The afternoon dissolves into a surreal mixture of wake and business meeting. Shipments still need to arrive. Distribution networks require management. And territorial disputes don't pause for mourning. Mac finds himself naturally assuming Duncan's role, making decisions with an authority that surprises even him. The Charlotte expansion continues as planned. He tells the assembled lieutenants in Duncan's study, Duncan's last wish was growth, and we'll honor that. Says who? Rodriguez challenges. Duncan never named a successor. Maybe the organization votes on new leadership. The organization isn't a democracy, Elena interjects smoothly. It's a business built on hierarchy and trust. Mac has earned both. Restrepo, who controls the money laundering networks, speaks up from his position near Duncan's trophy case. The banks won't transfer authorization without proper documentation. Legal succession requires legal papers. Mac had anticipated this obstacle. Duncan signed new partnership agreements before leaving for Colombia. I have copies in my safe, properly notarized and witnessed. The lie flows smoothly, backed by Elena's legal expertise in creating convincing forgeries. By evening, Mac Bethezar has transformed from lieutenant to leader through a combination of boldness, preparation, and the simple fact that nature abhors a vacuum. As the last mourners depart Duncan's mansion, Mac stands in the study that will soon be his own. The dead man's chair still bears the impression of his body, but the authority it represents has already transferred to new hands. Paulo approaches with a crystal tumbler of Duncan's favorite aguardiente, the same brand that carried poison the night before. To Don Duncan, he toasts with black irony. To the future, Mac replies, accepting the drink but not consuming it. He's learned caution from his own crimes. Elena appears in the doorway, silhouetted against the dying Miami sunset. The transfer is complete. Rodriguez suspects, but suspicion isn't proof. Chen will follow profit wherever it leads. Restrepo fears change more than death. And Agent Macduff? Still building his case against a dead man, by the time he realizes his primary target has been eliminated, will have restructured everything. New systems, new protocols, new levels of security he can't penetrate. Mac moves to Duncan's desk, running his fingers across the polished mahogany surface. How many death sentences had been signed at this desk? How many fortunes distributed? How many lives destroyed with casual pen strokes? Now it belongs to him. Outside, Miami prepares for another night of neon and vice, a city that never truly sleeps because too much money flows through its veins. Police helicopters resume their eternal patrol, but they search for yesterday's criminals, while today's kingpin consolidates power in plain sight. The phone rings, Mac's first call as the new dawn. A street dealer in Overtown needs product. A judge in federal court requires his monthly payment. A Colombian supplier wants confirmation that shipment schedules remain unchanged. Mac Bethezar answers each call with growing confidence, his voice carrying authority that Duncan's death has legitimized. But as he speaks, he notices his hands shaking slightly, and Elena's reflection in Duncan's mirror seems to flicker between woman and witch. The crown has been claimed, but crowns, as every king learns, prove heavier than they appear. Act 2 ends with Mac seated in Duncan's throne, surrounded by the trappings of power, while outside Miami's eternal dance of corruption and ambition continues under stars that witness all but judge nothing. 2 weeks have passed since Duncan's funeral, and Miami's skyline seems different to Mac Bethezar's eyes sharper, more defined, as if power has enhanced his vision while poisoning his soul. From behind the mahogany desk in what was once Duncan's study, Mac surveys an empire that spans from the Everglades to the Carolina Mountains. The pre-Columbian artifacts that once belonged to his mentor now bear witness to his reign, their golden faces reflecting fluorescent light like ancient judges. The mansion in Coral Gables has become his fortress, its Spanish colonial architecture hiding state-of-the-art surveillance systems and enough firepower to outfit a small army. Armed guards patrol the manicured grounds 24 hours a day, their Uzis concealed beneath tropical shirts that blend with Miami's casual aesthetic. But all the security in the world cannot protect a man from his own conscience, and Mac's dreams have become battlegrounds where Duncan's ghost demands justice. Elena glides through the mansion like a beautiful specter, her footsteps silent on marble floors that now echo with different footfalls. She has redecorated Duncan's master bedroom, replacing religious icons with modern art, transforming the space from shrine to statement. But Mac notices how she avoids the dining room where they shared their last meal with Duncan, as if certain memories carry radioactive contamination. The Charleston connection is secure. Paulo reports from his position near the window overlooking Biscayne Bay. Rodriguez's contacts there have agreed to our terms: 30% increase in volume, 40% increase in price. Mac nods without looking up from the financial reports spread across his desk. Numbers dance before his eyes: millions in cash flow, thousands in bribes, hundreds of lives dependent on his decisions. The mathematics of empire prove more complex than any Harvard Business School case study. And Rodriguez himself? Mac asks, his voice carrying undertones Paulo doesn't recognize. Cooperative. Respectful. He knows which way the wind blows. Paulo's reflection in the window shows a man changed by complicity, his easy charm now shadowed by knowledge of what they've done. But it's that knowledge that keeps Mac awake at night. Paulo was there when Duncan died, witnessed the transition of power, participated in the cover-up. In their business, witnesses become liabilities, and liabilities require permanent solutions. Elena enters the study carrying Café Cubano in delicate china cups that once belonged to Duncan's grandmother. Steam rises from the dark liquid like incense, and Mac catches the scent of his childhood Colombian coffee beans roasted with sugar and secrets. Agent Macduff held a press conference this morning, she announces, setting Mac's cup on a coaster that depicts Mayan warriors in eternal battle. Operation Green Ice is expanding. They're targeting money laundering operations specifically. Mac's hand freezes halfway to his coffee. How close are they? Close enough to make Rodriguez nervous. He's been asking questions about our banking protocols, our cash management systems. I think he's considering cooperation with federal authorities. The words hang in the air like gun smoke. Cooperation with federal authorities represents the ultimate betrayal in their world, a violation of codes older than any written law. Mac has ordered executions for lesser offenses. Rodriguez has been with the organization for 8 years. Paulo observes from his position at the window. Duncan trusted him completely. Duncan's dead. Mac replies with finality that surprises all three of them. Duncan's trust died with him. Elena moves behind Mac's chair, her hands resting on his shoulders with the familiarity of ownership. Perhaps it's time to restructure our operations. Eliminate potential weak points before they become actual problems. Mac understands her meaning perfectly. In their coded language, restructuring means murder, and weak points means anyone who might testify before a grand jury. But the suggestion ignites something cold and calculating in his chest, a recognition that power requires constant vigilance against both external and internal threats. Set up a meeting with Rodriguez, Mac decides. Tomorrow evening. Tell him we need to discuss the Charlotte expansion in detail. Paulo turns from the window, his face reflecting concern. Mac, Rodriguez isn't our enemy. He's been nothing but loyal since Duncan's death. Loyalty is a luxury we can't afford, Elena responds, before Mac can speak. In our business, survival trumps sentiment every time. The afternoon dissolves into a series of phone calls and meetings that establish Mac's authority throughout the organization. Street dealers report record sales in South Beach. Port Authority contacts confirm clean passage for incoming shipments. Politicians and judges receive their monthly payments with mathematical precision. But beneath the surface efficiency, Mac senses currents of unrest. Rodriguez isn't the only lieutenant asking uncomfortable questions. Chen has been inquiring about succession protocols, wondering aloud whether Duncan's death might have been prevented with better medical monitoring. Restrepo has hired additional security for his money laundering operations, claiming increased federal attention requires enhanced precautions. As evening approaches, Mac retreats to the mansion's rooftop terrace, where Duncan once hosted parties for Miami's shadow elite. The city spreads below him like a glittering circuit board, each light representing territory under his control. Police helicopters maintain their eternal patrol, but their searchlights seem less threatening now that he commands resources to redirect their attention. Elena joins him as twilight transforms the sky from blue to purple to star-studded black. She wears a simple white dress that makes her appear angelic in the soft lighting, though Mac knows better than to mistake appearance for reality. "You're troubled," she observes, accepting a glass of wine from the bottle they're sharing. Rodriguez knows too much. Paulo knows too much. Hell, Chen and Restrepo probably suspect more than they're admitting. Mac stares out at the city that has become both kingdom and prison. In the old days, when Duncan was alive, loyalty was assumed. Now it has to be enforced. Then enforce it. Elena's voice carries the steel that first attracted him to her dangerous beauty. A king who rules through love will be loved. A king who rules through fear will be obeyed. But a king who rules through nothing will not rule at all. Mac considers her words while sirens wail in the distance, ambulances or police cars responding to violence that maintains the delicate balance of their ecosystem. Miami never sleeps because its dreams are funded by nightmares, and Mac has become the city's most important insomniac. "Tomorrow night, Rodriguez," he says finally. "Next week we evaluate the others." Elena's smile could launch ships or sink them, depending on her mood. "I'll make the arrangements. A private dinner, just like the one we hosted for Duncan." The parallel chills Mac even as it excites him. Duncan's death had been necessity disguised as opportunity. Rodriguez's death would be pure calculation, the elimination of a threat that exists only in Mac's increasingly paranoid imagination. But paranoia, Mac reflects as Miami's lights twinkle below like earthbound stars, might be the most valuable survival skill in a business built on betrayal and blood. Those who fail to suspect everyone end up trusting the wrong person at the fatal moment. As they return inside, Mac catches his reflection in the terrace's sliding glass doors. The face staring back seems older, harder, marked by responsibilities that age men prematurely. Power, he realizes, extracts payment in flesh as well as conscience. Elena disappears toward their bedroom, but Mac lingers in Duncan's study, now his own domain of authority and isolation. The pre-Columbian artifacts seem to watch him with golden eyes that have witnessed centuries of violence and succession. Empire builders rise and fall with seasonal regularity, each believing their reign will prove different, permanent, blessed by gods who favor ambition over morality. Mac pours himself 3 fingers of Duncan's favorite aguardiente, the same brand that carried poison 2 weeks ago. The liquid burns his throat like liquid regret, but he finishes the drink anyway, toasting ghosts that refuse to stay buried and futures that grow darker with each decision. Outside, Miami continues its eternal dance of corruption and dreams, while inside his fortress, the new king of cocaine plans another murder to protect a throne built on the bones of men who trusted him. The next evening arrives with the sultry heat that makes Miami summers legendary. Humidity hangs in the air like invisible silk, and even the mansion's industrial air conditioning struggles against the subtropical climate. Rodriguez's white Mercedes S-Class pulls through the wrought iron gates at precisely 8 o'clock, its headlights cutting through the twilight like searching eyes. Mac watches from Duncan's former office as Rodriguez emerges from his vehicle. The Colombian lieutenant moves with the cautious grace of a man who has survived 2 decades in the cocaine trade through equal measures of cunning and violence. His charcoal suit is perfectly tailored, his silver hair slicked back with pomade that catches the mansion's security lights. At 53, Rodriguez commands respect. Through reputation he has killed 18 men with his own hands and ordered the deaths of countless others. Elena has prepared another intimate dinner, this time in the mansion's smaller dining room overlooking the garden where Duncan once fed exotic fish to his pet jaguars. The cats disappeared after their owner's death, relocated to a Colombian wildlife preserve, but their cages remain as reminders of predatory nature barely contained by civilization. Mi hermano. Rodriguez's embrace carries the scent of expensive cologne and underlying tension. His smile seems genuine, but Mac notices how his eyes scan the room's entrances and exits with professional assessment. You look well. Leadership agrees with you. Thank you, Rodriguez. Please, sit. Mac gestures to the chair that had been Paulo's just 2 weeks ago. Tonight, Paulo waits in the study, monitoring police scanner frequencies and maintaining communication with their street-level operations. His absence from dinner represents another calculated decision. Fewer witnesses mean fewer complications. Elena serves the first course with elegant efficiency. Fresh stone crab claws from the Keys, accompanied by key lime mustard sauce, that adds tropical complexity to the sweet meat. She wears emerald green tonight, a color that makes her eyes appear almost supernatural in the candlelight. The Charlotte operation proceeds smoothly. Rodriguez reports between bites. My contacts there are reliable, discreet. We should see full implementation within 60 days. Mac nods while studying Rodriguez's face for tells micro-expressions that might reveal hidden agendas or federal cooperation. And security arrangements? Done. Tight as a virgin's. Rodriguez catches himself glancing apologetically at Elena. Very secure. Local police are cooperative, and we've identified key federal agents for monitoring. Elena refills Rodriguez's wine glass with a vintage Bordeaux that costs more than most Americans earn in a month. The ruby liquid seems to glow with inner fire as she pours, each drop measured with precision that would impress a chemist. Agent Macduff concerns me, Mac says carefully. His investigation into money laundering operations could affect our banking protocols. Rodriguez's fork pauses halfway to his mouth. Macduff is persistent, but not particularly intelligent. He focuses on obvious targets while missing subtler operations. You seem to know him well. The comment hangs between them like a blade suspended by spider silk. Rodriguez's eyes meet Mac's across the table, and both men recognize the moment's significance. Either trust will be confirmed or suspicion will be validated by the next few words. I make it my business to know our enemies. Rodriguez replies smoothly. Knowledge is armor in our profession. Elena serves the main course, ropa vieja prepared with the same recipe she had used for Duncan's final meal, though tonight's version carries no chemical enhancements. The shredded beef symbolizes flesh torn apart by violence, an appropriate metaphor for their gathering. Duncan always said you were the most strategic thinker in the organization. Mac observes, cutting his meat with surgical precision. He valued your perspective on difficult decisions. Duncan was a great man. His loss still pains us all. Rodriguez raises his wineglass in apparent tribute. To his memory. To his legacy, Mac agrees, but doesn't drink. As the evening progresses, Rodriguez grows more relaxed, his conversation flowing with the wine Elena keeps providing. He discusses expansion plans, personnel decisions, territorial negotiations, all the mundane details that maintain a criminal empire. But Mac notices how often Rodriguez mentions federal investigations, how thoroughly he seems to understand DEA procedures and legal protocols. The green ice operation troubles me more than I've admitted. Rodriguez confesses as Elena clears the dinner plates. Macduff has sources we haven't identified. Information we thought secure has appeared in federal briefing documents. Elena returns with dessert. Flan prepared with Dominican rum and topped with caramelized sugar that cracks under silver spoons like breaking bones. The sweet custard dissolves on the tongue, but Mac tastes only suspicion and approaching violence. What kind of information? He asks. Banking procedures, transfer protocols, names of our financial contacts in the Cayman Islands. Rodriguez's voice drops to a whisper. Someone with access to our highest-level operations is feeding intelligence to federal authorities. Mac's hand moves instinctively toward the Glock holstered beneath his dinner jacket. Do you have suspects? Several, but suspicion isn't proof. and proof requires investigation. Rodriguez meets Mac's gaze directly. Perhaps it's time to conduct internal security reviews. Starting with those closest to Duncan before his death. The accusation lands like a physical blow. Rodriguez suspects Mac of federal cooperation, which means Rodriguez might be projecting his own guilt onto others. Or perhaps Rodriguez genuinely seeks to protect the organization by identifying actual federal informants. Elena catches Mac's eye from her position near the sideboard where she's preparing coffee service. Her slight nod confirms that she's ready to proceed with their plan. The poison waits in Rodriguez's cup, colorless and tasteless as moral compromise. Internal security is always wise, Mac agrees, but it must be handled delicately. False accusations destroy organizations faster than federal investigations. Rodriguez accepts his coffee with steady hands, stirring cream clockwise with the methodical precision of a man who pays attention to details. Of course! But protection requires action, even difficult action. Mac watches Rodriguez lift the cup to his lips, knowing that in 30 minutes, another witness to Duncan's final dinner will be silenced forever. But as the Colombian takes his first sip, Mac notices something wrong. Rodriguez's expression doesn't change. No surprise, no recognition of altered taste, no awareness of impending doom. Elena's eyes widen slightly as she realizes what Mac has already understood. Rodriguez switched the cups while she was preparing the service, a reflexive security measure learned through decades of survival in a business where trust kills more men than bullets. Excellent coffee, Elena, Rodriguez says, setting down Mac's cup with casual precision. Colombian beans, I assume? The room's temperature seems to drop 20 degrees, as Mac realizes he's been outmaneuvered by a man who survived this long by never assuming anyone's innocence. Rodriguez knows about the poison, which means Rodriguez knows about Duncan's murder, which means Rodriguez has been playing a much deeper game than any of them suspected. The finest, Elena replies, her voice steady despite the catastrophic failure of their plan. Rodriguez stands slowly, his hand moving to his jacket with practiced ease. Mac, Elena, it's been a lovely evening, but I think it's time we discussed business more. Directly. The Beretta 92 FS appears in Rodriguez's hand like magic, its muzzle trained on Mac's chest with unwavering precision. Outside, Miami's night sounds continue traffic, music, the eternal symphony of a city that never sleeps. But inside the dining room, silence stretches like a held breath. You killed Duncan, Rodriguez states, with certainty rather than accusation. The question is whether you're working for the Federales or simply eliminating competition. Mac's own weapon remains holstered, useless at this range against a man who has survived 2 decades of cartel warfare. Rodriguez. No lies, Mac. I've known since the funeral. Duncan's physician may have been bought, but I have contacts in the medical examiner's office. Traces of exotic alkaloids in his blood substances that don't occur naturally in Miami. Elena moves slightly, but Rodriguez shifts his aim toward her, without losing focus. Stay still, Bella. Your beauty won't stop bullets. The standoff crystallizes into a moment that will determine whether Mac's reign lasts weeks or years. Outside, police helicopters maintain their patrol routes, unaware that the balance of Miami's underworld hangs on conversations conducted over coffee and dessert. The dining room becomes a stage for death, 3 actors frozen in a tableau that will determine the future of Miami's cocaine empire. Rodriguez's Beretta maintains its unwavering aim while Mac calculates distances and angles with the desperate precision of a man whose next decision will be his last. Elena stands motionless beside the sideboard, her emerald dress making her appear like a beautiful statue carved from jealousy and ambition. 30 seconds, Mac, Rodriguez says, his voice carrying the calm authority of a man comfortable with violence. Tell me why you killed Duncan, or I kill you both, and take control of the organization myself. Mac's mind races through possibilities, each path leading to variations of destruction. Rodriguez commands significant loyalty among the Colombian connections. His death would trigger investigations that could expose everything. But allowing him to live means accepting blackmail, submission, the slow strangulation of authority. Duncan was weak. Mac says finally, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. The DEA was closing in, and he refused to adapt. His death was necessary evolution. Rodriguez's laugh carries no humor, Only recognition of inevitable brutality. Evolution requires fitness, Mac, but you've proven yourself unfit to survive. The shot comes without warning, but not from Rodriguez's weapon. Elena's small silver pistol, a .22 caliber Beretta Bobcat, concealed in her evening purse, speaks with authority despite its diminutive size. Rodriguez staggers backward, crimson spreading across his white shirt like spilled wine. His own gun clatters to the marble floor as his hands move instinctively to the wound in his chest. Puta! Rodriguez gasps, but Elena's second shot silences him forever. The Colombian lieutenant collapses beside Duncan's antique dining table, his blood pooling on tiles that have witnessed centuries of violence. Mac stares at his wife with new understanding. Elena's Harvard law education included more than contract negotiations and constitutional theory. She learned to kill with the same precision she applied to legal briefs. "How long have you been armed?" he asks. "Since our wedding day," Elena replies, returning the pistol to her purse with casual efficiency. "In our business, every woman needs insurance." The mansion's silence is profound after the violence. No alarm sound, no guards come running. The dining room soundproofing was designed to contain Duncan's business discussions, but it works equally well for executions. "We need to move quickly." Elena continues, already approaching Rodriguez's body with the clinical assessment of an undertaker. His men will expect regular communication. When they don't hear from him, Mac forces himself to think past the shock of witnessing his wife commit murder with the ease of ordering dinner. Rodriguez drove here alone. His bodyguards are waiting at his compound in Hialeah. Then we have time. Elena kneels beside the corpse, searching Rodriguez's jacket with practiced efficiency. She extracts his wallet, cell phone, and a small recording device that makes both of them freeze. "¿Qué es esto?" Mac whispers, taking the electronic device with trembling hands. Elena's face hardens as she recognizes the federal surveillance equipment. Rodriguez was working with Macbeth. The questions about security, the detailed knowledge of DEA procedures. He was feeding them intelligence while gathering evidence against us. The revelation transforms Rodriguez's death from murder into survival. If the Colombian had been cooperating with federal authorities, his execution becomes justified self-defense rather than paranoid elimination of competition. "Check his car," Mac orders, his voice strengthening as shock gives way to purpose. "Look for additional recording equipment, federal contact numbers, anything that confirms cooperation." While Elena searches Rodriguez's Mercedes, Mac studies the device she discovered. Its digital display shows 6 hours of recorded conversation, including tonight's dinner discussion and their previous meetings over the past 2 weeks. Rodriguez had been building a comprehensive case against the entire organization. Elena returns with a briefcase full of evidence that confirms their worst suspicions. Federal surveillance photographs, transcripts of wiretapped conversations, financial records that trace money laundering through their Cayman accounts. Rodriguez hadn't just been working with the DEA, he had been their primary source for Operation Green Ice. The bastard was selling us all out. Mac breathes, examining photographs of himself entering various business meetings. Duncan, Paolo, Chen, Restrepo, everyone? Not anymore, Elena points out pragmatically. Rodriguez's death eliminates their inside source and compromises their entire investigation. Mac moves to the window, overlooking the mansion's gardens, where security guards maintain their patrol routes in blissful ignorance of the drama unfolding inside. Miami's skyline glitters in the distance, a city built on contradictions and sustained by compromises that would horrify more innocent populations. "We need to restructure everything," he decides. "New communication protocols, new banking arrangements, new personnel in sensitive positions. If Rodriguez identified our vulnerabilities, we eliminate them before the feds can exploit them." Elena begins making phone calls on Rodriguez's cell phone, using his access codes to contact his men in Hialeah. Her acting skills prove remarkable as she explains that Rodriguez decided to extend his evening business discussions, that he won't be returning to his compound until morning. "That gives us 12 hours, she reports after ending the calls. "Enough time to create the proper narrative." Mac understands her meaning. Rodriguez's death must appear to result from federal action rather than internal violence. A staged DEA raid, complete with planted evidence and federal involvement, would eliminate both Rodriguez and the organization's suspicion about internal power struggles. Agent Macduff has been trying to penetrate our organization for 2 years. Mac muses, the plan crystallizing in his mind. What if he finally succeeded? What if his raid on Rodriguez's compound was so thorough that it left no survivors to contradict the official story? Elena's smile could make devils applaud her creativity. A raid that discovered Rodriguez's cooperation with federal authorities. His own men would kill him for betraying them to law enforcement. They work through the night, like composers writing a symphony of deception. Elena uses her legal expertise to create convincing federal warrants and surveillance reports. Mac coordinates with corrupt contacts in local law enforcement to ensure proper crime scene documentation. By dawn, Rodriguez's death has been transformed from murder into justice, his betrayal exposed and punished according to cartel law. Paulo arrives at sunrise, his face pale with exhaustion and growing suspicion. "I heard gunshots," he says carefully, studying the dining room where bloodstains have been scrubbed away, but the scent of violence lingers. Rodriguez was working with the DEA, Mac explains, showing his oldest friend the evidence Elena discovered. He's been feeding them intelligence for months. Paulo's expression shifts from suspicion to shock to rage as he examines the federal surveillance equipment and photographs. That hijo de puta. He had access to everything. Our routes, our contacts, our security protocols. Had. Elena corrects. Past tense. As Miami awakens to another day of tropical heat and criminal enterprise, Mac stands in Duncan's former office, now fully his own domain of authority and paranoia. Rodriguez's death has eliminated an immediate threat, while exposing vulnerabilities that run deeper than any individual betrayal. The phone rings, Chen calling from the Port Authority with routine business. A shipment from Colombia needs clearance. Street dealers require product. Judges expect their monthly payments. The machinery of empire continues despite the violence that maintains its operation. But Mac notices, his hands shaking as he answers, and Elena's reflection in the window seems to flicker between woman and something far more dangerous. Power secured through murder proves addictive but unstable, requiring constant vigilance against enemies both real and imagined. Outside, Miami prepares for another day in paradise, while inside his fortress, the new king of cocaine learns that every crown requires blood to keep it polished, and every throne demands souls to keep it stable. The game continues, but the rules have changed, and Mac Bethezar must decide whether he's playing to win or simply playing to survive the consequences of his own ambition. 6 weeks after Rodriguez's elimination, Miami simmers under an August heat that makes the air shimmer like liquid glass. The city's neon heart beats with renewed violence as Mac's paranoia transforms into systematic purges. 3 more lieutenants have disappeared. Chen from the Port Authority, found floating in Biscayne Bay with his throat cut, Restrepo discovered in his Coconut Grove penthouse, apparently the victim of a home invasion that left his money-laundering computers destroyed but his cash untouched. Mac stands before the bathroom mirror in Duncan's former master suite, studying a face that grows more haggard with each passing day. Dark circles ring his steel-gray eyes, and his hands shake with a tremor that no amount of cocaine can steady. Sleep brings nightmares where Duncan and Rodriguez sit at dinner tables that stretch into eternity, raising poison-filled glasses in eternal, mocking toasts. Elena emerges from their walk-in closet wearing a white sundress that makes her appear angelic in the morning light filtering through bulletproof windows. But Mac notices how she avoids eye contact now, how she moves through the mansion like a beautiful ghost haunting scenes of her own crimes. "The Jamaican situation requires attention," she announces, consulting a leather-bound planner that has replaced the federal evidence they destroyed. "Their new leadership is challenging our territory agreements." Mac nods without enthusiasm. Since Rodriguez's death, every problem feels like a conspiracy, every challenge a potential betrayal. The Jamaican drug lords who once respected Duncan's territorial boundaries now sense weakness in the transition of power, testing Mac's resolve with increased violence and reduced payments. "Paulo's handling it," Mac replies, splashing cold water on his face to wash away the sweat that constantly beads his forehead despite the mansion's industrial air conditioning. "Paulo." Elena's voice carries undertones Mac doesn't recognize. "Your oldest friend, your most loyal lieutenant, the last person who witnessed Duncan's transition." The words hang between them like a blade suspended over their marriage. Paulo knows too much, has seen too much, represents too great a risk in Mac's increasingly paranoid calculations. But unlike Rodriguez or Chen, Paulo's elimination would require betraying someone Mac genuinely loves: the brother he never had, the partner who shared his rise from college dealers to cartel royalty. Paulo is family, Mac says firmly, but his voice lacks conviction. Elena moves to the window overlooking the mansion's gardens, where armed guards patrol between palm trees whose fronds wave in the humid breeze like beckoning hands. Family can be the most dangerous enemy, mi amor. They know our weaknesses better than strangers. Mac's reflection stares back from the mirror with eyes that belong to a stranger, hollow, calculating, afraid. The transformation from ambitious lieutenant to paranoid king has taken less than 3 months, but the man looking back appears decades older than the one who first visited Madame Zelda's warehouse. I need guidance, he says suddenly. Real guidance. Not legal strategy or business analysis. Elena turns from the window, her emerald eyes reflecting understanding. The Brujas? The Brujas. Little Haiti bakes under the afternoon sun as Mac's armored Lincoln navigates streets lined with botanicas and restaurants serving goat curry to customers who conduct business in 3 languages. The neighborhood has changed since his first visit: more federal surveillance, more police patrols, more evidence of Agent Macduff's expanding investigation into Miami's supernatural underground. Madame Zelda's warehouse appears abandoned, its metal walls tagged with fresh graffiti that includes warnings about federales and traitors. But Mac recognizes the coded symbols that indicate the Santeria priestess still conducts business for those desperate enough to seek otherworldly counsel. Inside, the atmosphere has intensified since his previous visit. More candles burn on makeshift altars, their flames casting dancing shadows that seem almost alive. The scent of frankincense mixes with something more primal: the metallic tang of fresh blood from animal sacrifices offered to gods who demand payment for their prophecies. The 3 women materialize from the darkness like manifestations of Mac's guilty conscience. Madame Zelda appears more ancient, her clouded eyes reflecting candlelight like milky stars. The young Dominican woman with gold teeth has been replaced by an elderly Haitian whose scarred hands speak of decades practicing dark arts. The Colombian with hollow eyes remains, but her track marks have multiplied, and her stare carries the intensity of someone balanced on the edge of madness. Mac Bethezar returns. Madame Zelda intones, her voice carrying less warmth than their first meeting. The crown sits heavy on your head, verdad? I need to know my future, Mac responds, his desperation evident despite attempts to maintain dignity. My enemies multiply. The federales close in. Everyone I trust becomes a threat. The women exchange glances that communicate in languages older than Spanish or English. Madame Zelda gestures for Mac to sit in a chair positioned at the center of their altar arrangement, surrounded by offerings to spirits who judge mortal ambitions with cosmic indifference. The spirits demand payment for knowledge, the elderly Haitian announces, her accent thick with Caribbean mysticism. Blood payment, life payment. Mac produces a thick roll of $100 bills, but Madame Zelda waves the money away with dismissive contempt. Not dinero, hijo. The spirits hunger for essence, for sacrifice that carries meaning. The Colombian woman steps forward, extending a ceremonial knife whose obsidian blade gleams like frozen shadow. Your blood, freely given. Your life, willingly risked. Only then will the future reveal itself. Mac takes the knife without hesitation, its weight familiar from countless business negotiations conducted at gunpoint. The blade parts his palm like silk, releasing crimson drops that fall onto the altar with sounds like tiny heartbeats. The women begin chanting in languages that predate European conquest, their voices weaving harmonies that seem to originate from the warehouse's concrete foundations. Smoke rises from burning herbs Mac can't identify, creating atmospheric pressure that makes his ears pop as if he were ascending toward heaven or descending toward hell. Beware the man whose children you have slain, Madame Zelda suddenly pronounces, her clouded eyes focused on something beyond Mac's shoulder. He comes from the north with silver badges and righteous fury. Agent Macduff, Mac whispers, recognizing the prophecy's target. But fear him not, the elderly Haitian continues, her scarred hands tracing patterns in the smoke. No man born of woman can harm Mac Bethezar. The spirits have decreed your protection. The Colombian woman's voice joins the prophecy, like a third instrument in an infernal orchestra. You shall never be defeated, until the great forest comes to the mountain of glass. Mac struggles to interpret the cryptic language. What forest? What mountain? The Everglades, Madame Zelda explains, her voice returning to more earthly tones. When the swamp itself rises against your towers of glass and steel, only then will your reign end. The women's chanting reaches crescendo as Mac's blood continues dripping onto their altar. The warehouse seems to expand around him, its walls stretching toward infinity while the floor beneath his chair becomes transparent, revealing depths that plunge toward the earth's molten core. But tonight, the elderly Haitian announces, you must eliminate the final witness, the one whose loyalty blinds you to necessity. Mac's heart stops as he recognizes the prophecy's meaning. Paulo, his oldest friend, his most trusted ally, his brother in everything but blood. The spirits demand Paulo's death as payment for Mac's continued protection. There must be another way. Mac protests, but the women shake their heads in unison. The path to absolute power requires absolute commitment, Madame Zelda states with finality. Half measures lead to half victories, and half victories lead to complete defeat. As the ceremony concludes, Mac stumbles from the warehouse into Miami's blazing afternoon heat. His bandaged hand throbs with pain that extends far beyond physical injury, and the prophecies echo in his mind like verbal shrapnel. No man born of woman can harm him. He shall never be defeated until the forest comes to the mountain. But first, Paulo must die. The armored Lincoln carries him back toward Coral Gables, while Miami's eternal symphony of violence and corruption plays around him. Police sirens wail in the distance, helicopters circle overhead like mechanical buzzards, and the radio crackles with news of another drug-related shooting in Liberty City. Mac's phone buzzes with a text from Paulo. Family dinner tonight? Elena cooking? The innocence of the message makes Mac's chest tighten with something approaching grief. Paulo trusts him completely, loves him like a brother, would die for him without question. Which, Mac realizes with terrible clarity, is exactly what will happen. Evening descends on Miami like a velvet curtain soaked in blood, the city's neon arteries pulsing with electric life, while Mac prepares to commit the most personally devastating crime of his reign. The mansion in Coral Gables has been transformed into a theater of deception. Elena has dismissed all household staff except for Miguel, the elderly Cuban groundskeeper, whose selective blindness has been purchased with Swiss bank accounts and immigration documents for his grandchildren. Paulo's Porsche 911 purrs through the security gates at exactly 7 o'clock, its silver paint gleaming under the mercury vapor lights that illuminate every corner of the compound. Mac watches from Duncan's former office as his oldest friend emerges from the sports car with the easy confidence of a man who has never imagined betrayal from those he loves most. He looks happy, Elena observes from her position beside the window. She wears basic black tonight, a simple dress that could serve for either dinner party or funeral, depending on the evening's outcome. Mac's hands shake as he pours himself 4 fingers of Duncan's premium aguardiente, the same Colombian firewater that has witnessed 2 previous executions in this house. Paulo's always been optimistic. Even in college, when we were selling dime bags to frat boys, he believed we'd conquer the world. And you have, Elena replies, her voice carrying undertones of steel wrapped in silk. But conquest requires constant vigilance against those who might challenge your authority. The doorbell chimes with electronic precision. Its Westminster melody echoing through corridors that have heard similar sounds announce the arrival of other dinner guests who never saw another sunrise. Mac straightens his tie, pure silk from Milan, dark blue to hide potential bloodstains, and forces his face into an expression of brotherly affection. Mac. Hermano. Paulo's embrace carries the scent of expensive cologne and genuine warmth. At 34, he remains the golden boy of their partnership. Olive skin unmarked by stress, dark hair falling in perfect waves, a smile that could charm federal judges or cartel executioners with equal effectiveness. Paulo, mi hermano, you look well. Mac accepts the traditional kiss on each cheek while calculating the distance to the Glock holstered beneath his dinner jacket. Elena glides from the kitchen carrying a silver tray laden with appetizers, stone crab claws from the Keys, served with mustard sauce that gleams like liquid gold in the mansion's ambient lighting. Her smile radiates domestic perfection, though Mac notices how her free hand remains positioned near the evening purse where her small pistol waits like a mechanical prayer. Paulo, "You're looking very handsome tonight," Elena purrs, offering him champagne in crystal flutes that catch the light like frozen tears. "Success agrees with you." "Success agrees with all of us," Paolo replies, raising his glass toward Mac. "To the Bethezar organization. May it prosper for decades." The toast cuts through Mac like a blade forged from irony and regret. Paolo's loyalty remains absolute, even as Mac prepares to repay that faithfulness with murder. They move through the mansion's corridors toward the intimate dining room, where Duncan and Rodriguez met their respective fates, though Paolo's knowledge of those events makes him infinitely more dangerous than either previous victim. The dining room has been prepared with Elena's characteristic attention to detail. Candles flicker on the antique mahogany table, their flames dancing like tiny souls in purgatory. Fresh orchids provide centerpieces that smell of jungle humidity and hidden decay. The same Bordeaux that accompanied Rodriguez's final meal waits in crystal decanters, its ruby color reminiscent of blood under certain lighting conditions. The Charlotte expansion proceeds beautifully. Paolo reports as they settle into chairs that have become thrones of judgment. Local resistance has been discouraged. Federal presence remains minimal. Mac nods while studying his friend's face for signs of hidden knowledge or federal cooperation. Paolo's expression remains open, honest, unmarked by the paranoia that increasingly defines Mac's existence. Either Paolo possesses acting skills that rival Elena's, or his innocence remains genuine, a dangerous quality in their profession. "And Agent Macduff's investigation?" Mac asks carefully. "Stalled since Rodriguez's elimination," Paolo replies, cutting his stone crab with surgical precision. Without inside intelligence, the federales stumble around like blind men in a maze. Elena serves the main course with theatrical precision. Ropa vieja prepared according to her grandmother's recipe, the shredded beef symbolizing flesh torn apart by family violence. Mac watches Paolo accept the plate with trusting hands, unaware that each bite might be his last. "I've been thinking about succession planning," Mac announces suddenly, the words escaping before conscious thought can censor them. Paolo's fork pauses halfway to his mouth. "Succession? Mac, you're 35 years old. Planning for retirement seems premature. Our business ages men rapidly. Duncan seemed immortal until heart failure claimed him. Rodriguez appeared invincible before federal investigation destroyed him." Mac's voice carries weight that makes the candle flames flicker as if responding to emotional pressure. "Are you ill, hermano?" Paolo's concern appears genuine, unmarked by calculation or hidden agenda. "You've seemed different since assuming leadership. More withdrawn, more suspicious." Elena catches Mac's eye from across the table, her slight nod indicating readiness to proceed with their plan. The poison waits in Paolo's wineglass, a different chemical compound than the one used on Duncan, something that mimics cocaine overdose rather than heart failure. "Leadership carries burdens I never anticipated," Mac admits, his voice thick with manufactured melancholy and genuine regret. "Sometimes I wonder if Duncan felt this isolated, this haunted." Paolo sets down his fork and reaches across the table to grasp Mac's hand, the same hand that still bears bandages from the morning's blood sacrifice to hungry spirits. "Mac, we're brothers. Whatever troubles you carry, share them with me. That's what family does." The simple declaration of love and loyalty strikes Mac like physical violence. Paolo means every word would die for Mac without question, kill for him without hesitation, sacrifice everything for their friendship's sake. Which makes his planned execution not just murder, but fratricide of the most personal kind. "There are things you don't know," Mac whispers, his voice barely audible above the soft classical music Elena selected for their dinner soundtrack. "Things about Duncan's death, about the changes in our organization." Paolo's expression shifts slightly, intelligence flickering behind eyes that have always been more perceptive than his easy charm suggested. "What kind of things?" 1. Before Mac can respond, his secure phone buzzes with an encrypted message. Elena reaches for the device, her face draining of color as she reads the text. "Macduff," she announces, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Federal task force, moving tonight. Multiple locations." Mac's blood turns to ice water as Elena continues reading. "The mansion is on the list. They have warrants, surveillance authorization, tactical support. We have maybe 30 minutes before they breach the gates." Paulo stands immediately, his survival instincts overriding dinner conversation. We need to leave. Now. The boat's at the marina. Or the helicopter pad if we can reach it. But Mac remains seated, his mind racing through possibilities that all lead to the same inevitable conclusion. Macduff's raid represents either catastrophic timing or federal intelligence about tonight's planned execution. Either way, Paulo's continued existence has become an impossible liability. Elena. Activate the emergency protocols. Mac orders, his voice suddenly carrying absolute authority. Destroy the files, wipe the computers, eliminate anything that could provide evidence. And Paulo? Elena asks, her question carrying implications that hang in the air like gunsmoke. Mac studies his oldest friend's face open, trusting, ready to die fighting beside the man he loves like a brother. Paulo's loyalty remains absolute even as federal agents converge on their location, even as Mac prepares to repay that faithfulness with the ultimate betrayal. Paulo stays with me, Mac decides. We face this together. Elena's smile could freeze tropical blood, but she nods and disappears toward the mansion's security center where industrial shredders and computer viruses wait to eliminate evidence of their crimes. Outside, Miami's night sounds grow ominous helicopter rotors in the distance. The rumble of heavy vehicles moving through residential streets, the electronic crackle of federal communications systems coordinating a multi-location assault on Mac's empire. The net is closing, but Mac Bethezar still has time for one final act of brotherhood or betrayal. The first explosion comes from the mansion's eastern wing, where federal battering rams reduce reinforced doors to splinters and twisted metal. Mac feels the percussion in his chest as DEA tactical teams breach multiple entry points simultaneously, their coordinated assault designed to overwhelm any resistance before it can organize. Paulo draws his Beretta 92 FS with fluid precision, chambering a round that echoes through the dining room like a mechanical prayer. How many exits? Die, he asks, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Service tunnels beneath the wine cellar, Mac replies, forcing himself to move despite the paralysis of indecision. Elena knows the routes. Red laser dots dance across the dining room walls as federal snipers establish targeting positions from neighboring buildings. The mansion's security lights flicker and die, plunging the compound into darkness broken only by tactical flashlights and muzzle flashes. FBI, DIA, hands where we can see them. Agent Macduff's amplified voice booms through megaphones that turn his words into electronic commandments. Mac finally sees his nemesis illuminated by helicopter searchlights, a pale, intense man in his 40s whose hollow eyes reflect the obsessive dedication of someone who has sacrificed everything for justice. Elena reappears from the security center, her white dress now stained with ash from burning documents. The servers are wiped, the files destroyed. But they have thermal imaging, they know exactly where we are. Flashbang grenades detonate in the mansion's foyer, their concussive force shattering windows and triggering car alarms throughout the neighborhood. Mac's ears ring as Paulo grabs his arm, pulling him toward the service corridor that leads to Duncan's hidden escape routes. This way, hermano, we can reach the boats. But Mac hesitates, his mind fractured between survival instincts and supernatural prophecies that demand Paulo's death as payment for his continued protection. The spirits promised that no man born of woman could harm him, that he would never be defeated until the forest came to the mountain. But first, Paulo must die. Mac. Elena's voice cuts through the tactical chaos. Choose now. Federal agents flood the mansion like armed antibodies attacking a diseased organism. Their body armor bears the insignia of multiple agencies: DEA, FBI, ATF, U. Marshals, a joint task force assembled specifically to decapitate Mac's organization. Tactical lights probe every shadow, while combat boots thunder across marble floors that once hosted Miami's shadow elite. Mac draws his Glock 19, the weapon's familiar weight steadying his shaking hands. Behind them, federal agents methodically clear each room, their professional voices coordinating movements through encrypted radios. Ahead, freedom waits in service tunnels that lead to cigarette boats capable of outrunning Coast Guard cutters. Paulo, Mac says quietly, his friend's name carrying the weight of decades of shared history. ¿Qué pasa, hermano? Paulo turns, his weapon lowered. trust radiating from eyes that have never imagined betrayal from the man he loves like a brother. Mac's gun rises until its muzzle aligns with Paulo's chest center mass, the way they practice together at shooting ranges in the Everglades. His finger finds the trigger's sweet spot, that moment of perfect balance between life and death. "I'm sorry," Mac whispers. But before he can fire, Agent Macduff appears in the corridor's far end, his service weapon trained on both men with unwavering precision. "Drop your weapons. Now." The standoff crystallizes into a moment that will determine whether Mac's reign ends in capture or continues through escape. Paulo, caught between his best friend's betrayal and federal authority, faces a choice that will define his final seconds of existence. "Mac," Paulo says softly, his voice carrying hurt that cuts deeper than any bullet, "you were going to kill me. Your own brother." "The spirits demanded it," Mac replies, his explanation sounding hollow even to his own ears. "Weapons down!" Macduff advances, his backup close behind tactical officers whose faces hide behind ballistic masks that make them appear like mechanical death gods. Elena makes the decision for all of them. Her small pistol appears in her hand like magic, its .22 caliber reports sounding like firecrackers compared to the larger weapons surrounding them. But accuracy matters more than caliber, and Elena's shots find their targets with surgical precision. Agent Macduff staggers backward as her bullets punch through his ballistic vest. The federal manhunter finally brought low by a woman whose beauty disguised lethal competence. His backup officers return fire immediately, their automatic weapons filling the corridor with lead and fury. Paulo shoves Mac toward the service tunnel as bullets fragment the marble walls around them. "Vamos, now." They run through passages Duncan built for exactly this scenario, their footsteps echoing in concrete tunnels that smell of mildew and desperation. Behind them, federal agents coordinate search patterns while forensics teams document evidence of the empire Mac built on ambition and blood. The tunnel emerges at a private dock where a cigarette Top Gun 38 waits with engines warming. The sleek powerboat represents the pinnacle of 1,990 seconds. Maritime technology, twin Mercury racing engines, capable of 60-plus knots, radar-defeating composite construction, and enough fuel capacity to reach the Bahamas without refueling. Elena reaches the boat first, her white dress ghostly in the moonlight filtering through palm fronds. Paulo helps Mac aboard, while Coast Guard spotlights probe the waterway like metallic fingers searching for prey. "Where's Macduff?" Mac asks as the boat's engines roar to life. "Dead," Elena replies simply. "I put 2 in his chest." The speedboat explodes from the dock like a liquid bullet, its wake-white foam that disappears into Biscayne Bay's darkness. Behind them, the mansion burns as federal agents discover evidence of an empire that spanned from the Everglades to the Carolina mountains. But as they race toward international waters, Mac realizes the terrible irony of his situation. He has survived the federal raid, eliminated Agent Macduff, and escaped with his life and closest allies. Yet he has also failed to complete the sacrifice the spirits demanded. Paulo lives, which means Mac's supernatural protection remains incomplete. "The Bahamas," Elena shouts over the engine's roar. "We have accounts there, safe houses, new identities." Paulo stares back at Miami's receding skyline, his dark eyes reflecting betrayal and understanding. "You were going to kill me, Mac. Your own brother. Your oldest friend." "The prophecy demanded it," Mac explains desperately. "The spirits said." "The spirits?" Paulo's laugh carries no humor, only the bitter recognition of how far ambition has corrupted the man he once knew. "You've become exactly like Duncan, paranoid, superstitious, willing to kill anyone who threatens your power." The speedboat cuts through darkness toward the horizon where international waters promise temporary sanctuary. But Mac knows that crossing that line won't end his troubles, it will only transform him from king to exile, from hunter to hunted. Behind them, Miami burns like a fallen empire, its lights reflected in waters that have swallowed countless dreams and ambitions. The city will rebuild, new players will emerge, and the eternal dance of corruption and justice will continue with different performers, but identical steps. As Act 4 concludes, Mac Bethezar flees toward an uncertain future, his empire destroyed, his closest allies questioning his sanity, and his supernatural protections incomplete, due to his failure to sacrifice the one person whose love might have saved him from the paranoia that ultimately consumed his soul. The prophecy remains unfulfilled. Macduff is dead but replaced by others who will continue the hunt, and Mac must face the final act of his tragedy, as an exile whose crown exists only in memory, and whose kingdom has become a burning monument to the price of unchecked ambition. 3 months in exile have transformed Mac Bethezar from cocaine king to haunted specter, his empire reduced to memories, and Swiss bank account numbers that provide wealth, but no kingdom to rule. The Bahamian safe house perches on a cliff overlooking turquoise waters that should offer paradise but feel more like a beautiful prison. Palm trees sway in tropical breezes that carry the scent of hibiscus and decay, while speedboats patrol the horizon, some belonging to Bahamian authorities, others to American agencies still hunting the ghost of Miami's fallen cartel. Mac stands on the villa's terrace at dawn, watching the sun rise over waters that separate him from everything he once controlled. His reflection in the sliding glass doors reveals a man consumed by paranoia and regret. Steel gray eyes sunken into dark hollows, silver threading through black hair prematurely, hands that shake with tremors no amount of cocaine can steady. The tailored suits have been replaced by linen shirts and cotton pants, but no casual clothing can disguise the tension that coils through his body like electrified wire. Elena moves through the villa like a beautiful ghost, her footsteps silent on Italian marble floors that echo the mansion they fled. She wears white almost exclusively now, flowing dresses that make her appear angelic in the Caribbean light, though Mac knows better than to mistake appearance for innocence. Her emerald eyes have grown distant, calculating, as if she's already planning their next move while mourning the empire they lost. Paulo sits beside the infinity pool that blends seamlessly with the ocean horizon, his olive skin darkening under the relentless tropical sun. But the easy charm that once made him irresistible to women and federal agents alike has curdled into something harder, more bitter. He knows Mac planned to kill him, attempted fratricide for supernatural protection that never materialized. Their brotherhood has become a ceasefire between former allies who no longer trust each other's motives. The Miami Herald ran another story, Elena announces, emerging from the villa's communication center with newspapers and encrypted message printouts. Federal task force claims total victory over the Bethezar organization. 63 arrests, 400 million in seized assets, complete dismantling of our distribution network. Mac accepts the newspaper with hands that leave sweat stains on the paper. Headlines scream about justice served and drug empires toppled. But he searches for subtler information, which lieutenants cooperated with authorities, which territories remain contested, which suppliers might welcome a fallen king's return. They're calling me the ghost of Biscayne Bay, Mac observes, reading an editorial that transforms him into myth. A criminal mastermind who vanished into legend, leaving only corpses and burned money in his wake. Legends can be dangerous, Paulo comments from his position by the pool. They inspire copycats and attract treasure hunters. Every ambitious dealer in Miami will claim to be your heir. Every federal agent will want to be the one who brings down the ghost. Elena spreads additional documents across the terrace's teak table: intelligence reports, purchased from corrupt officials, surveillance photographs of their former territories, financial statements showing how quickly their empire collapsed without central leadership. Nature abhors a vacuum, and Miami's cocaine trade has already evolved to fill the space Mac's organization once occupied. The Jamaicans have claimed most of our South Beach territory, she continues. The Colombians are fighting over port access. The Russians are moving into money laundering. Everything we built has been divided among scavengers. Mac studies photographs of men he once considered subordinates now wearing expensive suits and commanding their own armies. Rodriguez's death had been necessary, but it also eliminated his extensive Colombian connections. Chen's murder closed their port authority access. Restrepo's execution destroyed their banking networks. Each killing that seemed like strategic necessity now appears as self-destructive paranoia. There's something else, Elena adds, her voice carrying undertones Mac doesn't recognize. Paulo. Show him. Paulo reaches into his shirt pocket and produces a small plastic device that makes Mac's blood freeze. It's a recording device, similar to the one they found on Rodriguez but smaller, more sophisticated. The kind of equipment that federal agencies provide to protected witnesses and undercover informants. How long? Mac asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Since Macduff's raid, Paulo replies, his dark eyes meeting Mac's with steady defiance. They approached me while you were unconscious on the boat. DEA, FBI, Justice Department. They want the ghost of Biscayne Bay. And they're willing to offer complete immunity in exchange for testimony. Elena's hand moves to her evening purse, where the small pistol waits like a mechanical prayer, but Paulo shakes his head with sad finality. Kill me if you want, hermano, but my death won't change anything. They already have enough evidence to convict you for Duncan's murder, Rodriguez's execution, Chen's assassination. The only question is whether they take you alive or bring back your corpse. Mac's world tilts on its axis as he realizes the full scope of his situation. Paulo's betrayal, if it can be called betrayal when Mac planned to kill him first, represents more than personal treachery. It's the fulfillment of the supernatural prophecy that promised his downfall would come through those closest to him. You're working with them, Mac states, the reality settling into his chest like a lead weight. I'm surviving them, Paulo corrects. The same way you survived Duncan's death, Rodriguez's suspicions, Macduff's investigation. But you forgot the most important rule of our business: never trust anyone completely, not even family. The villa's satellite phone rings with electronic urgency, its encrypted connection carrying news that will reshape Mac's understanding of his position. Elena answers with professional efficiency, her Spanish too rapid and technical for Mac to follow completely. But he recognizes certain words: federal, extradition, imminent. Bahamian authorities? Elena reports after ending the call. They've received formal requests from the U.S. Justice Department. Our diplomatic immunity expires in 72 hours. Mac moves to the terrace's edge, staring out at waters that have transformed from sanctuary to trap. The villa's isolation, once a protective advantage, now feels like preparation for siege. Federal agencies, Bahamian authorities, and ambitious competitors all circle like sharks sensing blood in crystal-clear waters. What are our options? He asks, though his voice suggests he already knows the answer. Limited, Elena admits. The Swiss accounts are frozen. The Colombian suppliers consider us too dangerous for future business. The legitimate companies have been seized or destroyed. We have enough cash for perhaps 6 months of basic survival. Paulo stands and walks to the villa's edge where helicopter landing pad waits unused, its concrete surface cracking under tropical weather and neglect. There is another option, he says carefully. Cooperation with federal authorities. Testimony in exchange for witness protection. New identities, new lives, clean slates. The suggestion hangs in the Caribbean air, like toxic gas. Cooperation with federal authorities represents the ultimate betrayal in their profession, a violation of codes older than any written law. Mac has killed men for less treacherous thoughts. But as he considers the alternative: capture, trial, life imprisonment, or execution, the unthinkable begins to seem rational. He could trade information about Colombian suppliers, Mexican distributors, corrupt officials throughout the Western Hemisphere. Knowledge that could dismantle entire networks while purchasing his freedom. Duncan would roll over in his grave, Mac murmurs. Duncan's dead. Elena replies with brutal practicality. We're still alive, but only for the moment. Survival requires adaptation, and adaptation requires sacrificing outdated loyalties. The sun climbs higher over the Bahamas, its heat already oppressive despite the early hour. Mac recognizes the metaphorical weight, time running out, options disappearing, the net closing with mathematical precision. Federal authorities have learned patience, allowing exile and isolation to accomplish what raids and arrests could not. But deep in his chest, Mac feels something else stirring the rage that built his empire, the ambition that toppled Duncan, the ruthlessness that eliminated Rodriguez and Chen and Restrepo. Perhaps the ghost of Biscayne Bay has one final act of violence left before accepting defeat. Contact them, Mac decides suddenly. Federal authorities, Bahamian officials, whoever's coordinating this trap. Tell them Mac Bethezar wants to negotiate. Elena and Paulo exchange glances that communicate in languages developed through shared complicity and mutual betrayal. They recognize the tone in Mac's voice, the same inflection he used before ordering executions, before planning coups, before transforming from loyal lieutenant to paranoid king. What kind of negotiation? Elena asks. Mac's smile could freeze tropical blood. the kind that ends with either complete surrender or apocalyptic violence. But first, I want to see their faces when the ghost becomes flesh again. As the Caribbean sun beats down on their clifftop sanctuary, Mac Bethezar prepares for the final gamble of his criminal career, a confrontation that will either restore his fallen empire or ensure his legend becomes a cautionary tale whispered in the shadows of Miami's eternal night. The meeting takes place on neutral ground, a luxury yacht anchored in international waters 12 miles off Nassau, where Bahamian sovereignty meets federal jurisdiction in a carefully choreographed dance of diplomatic immunity. The vessel, a 120-foot Benetti christened Lady Justice, belongs to a Panamanian shell company that exists only in Swiss bank records and Justice Department case files. Mac boards the yacht wearing his finest remaining suit, charcoal gray Armani that conceals the Kevlar vest Elena insisted he wear. His steel gray eyes scan the assembled federal officials with the practiced assessment of a predator, evaluating threats and opportunities. Agent Sarah Chen has replaced the deceased Macduff as task force leader, her Asian features impassive behind wire-rimmed glasses that reflect the Caribbean sun like metallic shields. Mr. Bethezar, Chen's voice carries the authority of someone accustomed to negotiating with dangerous men. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Mac takes his seat at the yacht's conference table, noting how federal agents position themselves at strategic intervals around the deck. Their body language suggests readiness for violence despite the diplomatic setting, hands resting near concealed weapons, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Elena sits to Mac's right, her white sundress and pearl jewelry making her appear like a grieving widow rather than a master criminal. But Mac notices how her purse remains positioned for quick access to the small pistol that has killed 2 federal agents and countless rivals. Paulo occupies the chair across from Mac, his position symbolic of the chasm that now separates former brothers. The recording device pinned beneath his collar represents more than federal cooperation. It's a technological dagger aimed at Mac's heart. The United States government is prepared to offer substantial concessions in exchange for your cooperation. Agent Chen begins, opening a leather briefcase that contains documents thick enough to rewrite history. Complete immunity from prosecution. Witness protection for your family. Relocation to any non-extradition country of your choosing. Mac studies the contract with eyes that have read countless death warrants disguised as business agreements. The legal language promises salvation in exchange for betraying everyone who trusted him, Colombian suppliers, Mexican distributors, corrupt officials throughout the Western Hemisphere. What exactly does cooperation entail? Mac asks, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the decision before him. Names, locations, methods, financial records. Everything you know about cocaine distribution networks from Mexico to Miami to New York. Chen's fingers drum against the table with mechanical precision. Your testimony could dismantle cartels that have operated with impunity for decades. Elena leans forward slightly, her emerald eyes reflecting calculations that span continents and currencies. And, if we refuse? Extradition within 72 hours. Trial in federal court. Life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Chen's smile carries no warmth, only the satisfaction of a hunter who has finally cornered dangerous prey. The Bahamian government has been very cooperative in facilitating justice. Mac's phone buzzes with an encrypted message that makes his blood freeze. Elena reads over his shoulder, her face draining of color as she processes the intelligence their remaining contacts have provided. What is it? Chen asks, noting their reaction. Colombian suppliers have issued execution orders, Mac admits, recognizing that concealment serves no purpose. My former partners consider me too great a liability for continued existence. Dead or alive, they want me eliminated before I can testify. The revelation transforms the yacht's atmosphere from negotiation to siege preparation. Federal agents adjust their positions while scanning the horizon for threats that could emerge from any direction. The Caribbean's crystal-clear waters suddenly seem filled with predatory possibilities. All the more reason to accept our protection, Chen observes. Witness protection offers the only guarantee of survival. But Mac's attention has shifted to Paulo, whose dark eyes reflect knowledge that cuts deeper than any federal threat. His oldest friend, his former brother, his intended victim Paulo, holds Mac's life in hands that have learned to betray with surgical precision. Tell them about Duncan, Paulo says quietly. his voice carrying the weight of shared guilt and mutual destruction. "Tell them how you really built this empire." The words hang over the yacht like storm clouds gathering on a clear horizon. Agent Chen's expression sharpens as she recognizes the significance of Paulo's statement, the promise of evidence that could transform their case from criminal conspiracy to murder in the first degree. "Duncan Kano was more than your mentor," Chen states, her voice carrying the certainty of someone who has studied Mac's rise with academic precision. "He was your first victim." Mac feels the walls closing around him with mathematical inevitability. Paulo's betrayal, Elena's calculations, federal pressure, Colombian death sentences. Every force in his universe has aligned to demand a reckoning that can no longer be postponed or deflected. Duncan was weak, Mac admits, his voice barely audible above the yacht's generators and the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. He refused to adapt to changing circumstances. His death was necessary evolution. Elena's hand moves to his arm, her touch carrying both comfort and warning. But Mac recognizes that even his wife's loyalty has limits, boundaries defined by survival instincts that transcend romantic attachment. "How?" Chen presses, her digital recorder capturing every word for federal prosecutors who will transform Mac's confessions into legal weapons. "Poison, Russian compound, tasteless and undetectable. Elena administered it during a celebration dinner at our penthouse." The words flow from Mac's mouth like blood from a severed artery, each admission weakening his position while strengthening federal cases against him. Paulo nods with something approaching satisfaction. Rodriguez suspected. That's why he started cooperating with Macduff. He knew Mac was eliminating anyone who might threaten his authority. "So you killed Rodriguez too?" Chen continues, her questioning following the logical progression of Mac's paranoid purges. "Elena shot him during dinner. Self-defense, we claimed. But really strategic elimination." Mac's voice grows stronger as confession transforms into testimony. "Chen, Restrepo, others all eliminated because they knew too much or suspected too much." The Caribbean sun beats down on the yacht as Mac Bethezar systematically destroys the foundation of his criminal empire through federal cooperation. Each revelation represents another nail in the coffin of the organization he built through ambition, maintained through violence, and will now demolish through betrayal. But as he speaks, Mac notices Elena's expression, hardening into something that transcends disappointment or rage. Her emerald eyes reflect calculations that span continents and consequences, suggesting that his wife may have her own contingency plans for this moment of reckoning. "There's something else," Elena announces suddenly, her voice cutting through Mac's testimony like a blade through silk. Agent Chen turns her attention to the woman who has remained largely silent throughout the proceedings, recognizing that Elena's legal expertise might provide insights that Mac's street knowledge cannot. "The Swiss accounts contain more than drug money," Elena continues, her words carrying implications that make even federal agents lean forward with interest. "Campaign contributions, judicial bribes, political payments spanning 3 decades and 2 hemispheres, names that would topple governments if revealed." Mac stares at his wife with growing understanding. Elena isn't just offering testimony, she's auctioning information to the highest bidder, using federal desperation to negotiate the best possible terms for their cooperation. "What kind of names?" Chen asks. Though her expression suggests she already knows the answer, will reshape their investigation. Elena's smile could make angels weep with envy. Presidents, senators, Supreme Court justices, cabinet members. Men who built their careers on cocaine money while publicly declaring war on drugs. The yacht seems to rock more violently as Elena's revelation settles over the assembled federal officials. This investigation has evolved beyond criminal prosecution into potential constitutional crisis, requiring decisions at levels far above Agent Chen's authority. As the Caribbean sun climbs toward its zenith, Mac Bethezar watches his wife transform their downfall into leverage, their defeat into negotiation, their betrayal into the opening gambit of an entirely different game, whose stakes include the stability of governments that exist only through the consent of citizens who believe in their leaders' integrity. The yacht's satellite phone erupts with electronic urgency as Agent Chen receives encrypted communications from Justice Department headquarters. Her face hardens as she processes intelligence that transforms their negotiation from criminal prosecution into national security crisis. The names Elena revealed, presidents, senators, Supreme Court justices, represent a conspiracy that could topple governments and rewrite the political landscape of the entire Western Hemisphere. Washington wants a complete intelligence debriefing, Chen announces, her voice tight with implications that stretch far beyond their floating conference room. Full disclosure of all political connections, financial records, and corruption networks. In exchange, witness protection for both of you. Mac studies the federal agent's face, recognizing the moment when law enforcement becomes political necessity. Elena's revelation about government corruption has transformed them from captured criminals into strategic assets whose knowledge could prevent constitutional crisis or trigger revolutionary upheaval. And Paulo? Mac asks, his eyes meeting his former friend across the table. Protected witness. New identity, relocation, complete immunity. Chen's fingers dance across her laptop keyboard, coordinating with agencies whose acronyms Mac doesn't recognize. The three of you disappear forever, and the ghost of Biscayne Bay becomes a legend that died in international waters. But before anyone can respond, Paulo's expression changes as he listens to something only he can hear through a microscopic earpiece hidden beneath his collar. His dark eyes widen with knowledge that makes his olive skin pale despite the Caribbean sun. They're coming, Paulo whispers, his voice carrying the terror of a man who has seen too much violence. Colombian hit squad, fast boats, military weapons. They've been tracking our location through satellite surveillance. Mac's blood freezes as he processes the implications. The Colombian suppliers aren't content to wait for federal prosecution, they want immediate elimination of the security risk his testimony represents. Dead men tell no tales, and Mac's knowledge could destroy cartels that span continents. Agent Chen barks orders into her encrypted radio, while federal agents assume defensive positions around the yacht's perimeter. But Mac recognizes the futility of their preparation. Federal agents armed with service weapons cannot match Colombian sicarios, equipped with military hardware and decades of assassination experience. How long? Elena asks, her hand moving to the evening purse where her small pistol waits like a final prayer. 10 minutes, maybe less. Paulo's voice carries the hollow certainty of a man who has accepted his approaching death. 3 cigarette boats, each carrying 6 men with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. Mac moves to the yacht's railing, scanning the horizon where heat distortion makes the boundary between sea and sky shimmer like liquid mercury. In the distance, 3 dark shapes race toward their position, with the mechanical precision of guided missiles seeking their target. We can't outrun them, Chen realizes, studying the yacht's specifications on her laptop. This vessel's top speed is 18 knots. Those cigarette boats can do 60 plus. Elena appears beside Mac at the railing, her white dress ghostly in the intensifying Caribbean light. The prophecy, she murmurs, her voice carrying recognition that makes Mac's chest tighten with supernatural dread. What prophecy? Chen demands. But her question is answered by the approaching roar of high-performance marine engines pushed to their absolute limits. Mac remembers Madame Zelda's words from what seems like decades ago. No man born of woman can harm Mac Bethezar. You shall never be defeated until the great forest comes to the mountain of glass. The Colombian boats emerge from heat distortion like mechanical demons, their sleek hulls cutting through crystal-clear waters with predatory efficiency. Mac counts 18 men total, each armed with weapons that could reduce the federal yacht to floating debris within minutes. The forest, Elena breathes, pointing toward the lead boat where something impossible becomes visible through the vessel's tactical binoculars. The cigarette boat's crew wears camouflage fatigues decorated with patches that make Mac's superstitious blood freeze. Special Forces Commandos Jungla, Colombia's elite anti-narcotics unit. These aren't cartel sicarios seeking revenge, but government soldiers conducting an officially sanctioned elimination of witnesses whose testimony could embarrass powerful allies. Forest soldiers, Mac whispers, understanding finally arriving like a bullet to the brain. The prophecy spoke literally. The great forest, the jungle commandos, comes to the mountain of glass. Agent Chen stares through her own binoculars at approaching death, recognizing military precision in the boat's formation and weapons deployment. Those aren't criminals. They're Colombian special forces conducting a black operation on behalf of officials whose names appear in your wife's records. The first rocket-propelled grenade screams across the water like a mechanical banshee, its warhead designed to penetrate naval armor and incinerate everything inside. Agent Chen's tactical team returns fire with service weapons that sound like firecrackers compared to the military ordnance exploding around them. Mac draws his Glock 19, knowing its 17 rounds cannot match the firepower arrayed against them, but needing to feel steel in his hands during his final moments. Beside him, Elena produces her small pistol with movements that seem almost casual despite the chaos erupting around them. Together, she says, her emerald eyes reflecting love and calculation in equal measure. Paulo appears at their side, his own weapon drawn but his face carrying the peaceful expression of a man who has made peace with approaching death. Like the old days, hermano. Together until the end. The yacht's superstructure explodes in fragments of fiberglass and metal, as Colombian commandos demonstrate why they've never failed to eliminate their designated targets. Federal agents die with professional courage, returning fire until their positions are overrun by soldiers whose jungle warfare experience spans decades of narcotics interdiction. Mac fires his last round as a Commandos Jungla operative vaults onto the yacht's deck, the man's camouflage fatigues making him appear like a manifestation of Mac's prophetic nightmares. The soldier falls backward into Caribbean waters that have swallowed countless dreams and ambitions, but his replacement appears immediately with automatic weapons that end conversation permanently. Elena's final shot takes down another commando, but her small pistol lacks the power to penetrate military body armor. She dies as she lived, beautiful, calculating, and absolutely convinced of her own superiority, until reality proved otherwise. Paulo survives longest, his natural athleticism allowing him to dodge fire while returning accurate shots that demonstrate why he once commanded respect throughout Miami's underworld. But numbers and firepower inevitably triumph over individual skill, and Mac watches his oldest friend fall beside the yacht's swimming pool, crimson spreading across water that reflects the Caribbean sky like liquid mirrors. As Mac himself staggers under the impact of multiple wounds, he recognizes the cosmic irony of his situation. The prophecy proved accurate in every detail. No man born of woman harmed him directly, but soldiers of the forest conquered his mountain of glass through superior firepower and international conspiracy. Agent Chen dies clutching her encrypted laptop, taking with her evidence that could have toppled governments and rewritten history. The Colombian commandos methodically eliminate every federal witness while Mac bleeds out on Italian marble that Duncan once walked with imperial confidence. The crown. Mac whispers to no one, his voice barely audible above the tactical aftermath of professional assassination. Heavy. So heavy. The Caribbean sun beats down on floating wreckage as Colombian special forces complete their mission with mathematical precision. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence of the meeting that could have exposed corruption spanning 3 decades and 2 hemispheres. Within hours, official reports will describe a tragic accident, a pleasure yacht that exploded due to engine malfunction, claiming the lives of several fugitive criminals who had been hiding in international waters. The ghost of Biscayne Bay will become literal truth, another legend whispered in Miami's shadows while new players fight over territories he once commanded. But in the depths of Biscayne Bay, where federal divers will never search and Colombian commandos assume their secrets remain buried, Mac Bethezar's empire lives on in Swiss bank accounts and encrypted files that wait like digital time bombs to detonate whenever ambitious prosecutors discover their existence. The king is dead, but kingdoms, Mac learned too late, prove more resilient than the men who build them. As the Caribbean swallows the last evidence of Mac's reign, Miami's skyline glitters in the distance, eternal, indifferent, ready to crown the next ambitious soul who believes power can be seized without consequences. The city's neon heart beats with renewed violence as new players claim territories the ghost once commanded, each believing their story will end differently, each destined to discover that crowns, whether literal or metaphorical, exact payment in blood from every head that wears them. The prophecy is fulfilled, the forest has conquered the mountain, and somewhere in Little Haiti, 3 women smile in the darkness as they prepare to offer guidance to Mac Bethezar's inevitable replacement. The game continues, but the players have changed, and Miami's eternal dance of corruption and ambition spins toward its next violent crescendo,